This is Katelyn,
And this is Piper.
and this is our presentation on the Stuarts of England.
Rise to power. King James VI of Scotland succeeded the crown from Elizabeth I and became King James I of England. This combined the Scottish and English thrones. This transition of power was very smooth, and it consolidated the powers without much trouble.
At the time, he was well educated and had 35 years of experience ruling Scotland. He was also the son of Mary, Queen of Scots. King James also kept himself in good graces with Elizabeth I, even when she executed his mother, in hopes of one day ascending the throne.
Line of succession. James Stuart took over the crown from Queen Elizabeth I in 1603. He combined his rule in Scotland with his new kingship in England, creating the United Kingdom.
The succession of power was a struggle for the next king, King Charles I. Parliament attempted to prevent Charles from ascending the throne, while King James I lectured the House of Commons, saying that there are no privileges and immunities which can stand against a divinely appointed king. This countered the English tradition that a son's property could not be taken away without due process. King James and his son Charles felt threatened by this, causing arguments to be made between the Crown and the Commons.
Charles I took over the crown and attempted to govern without the help of Parliament and finance his government with emergency taxes. This caused many problems within the United Kingdom. Charles ruled between 1629 and 1640. By 1640, he was forced to summon Parliament due to the financial crisis that he caused. The Restoration brought Charles II to power in 1660 after the reign of a non-Stuart king. Unlike Charles I, he wanted to work with Parliament to secure the United Kingdom financially.
After an unstable treaty ruined the reputation of King Charles II, his brother, King James II, succeeded him. King James II, his wife, and his infant son fled to France, where he was imprisoned by Louis XIV. His daughter, Mary, and her husband, Prince William of Orange, took over as the Queen and King of England. The taking of the throne by Mary and William was known as the Glorious Revolution.
Leadership characteristics. King James I firmly believed in the divine right of kings, and he was an advocate of royal absolutism.
King Charles I believed in the divine right of kings like his father. He sought to govern according to his own conscience, which was why he dismissed Parliament for over 21 years.
King Charles II was an adaptable king, and he worked with Parliament to fix the financial issues in the United Kingdom. The period of his rule is referred to as the Restoration period, and he grew up during the English Civil War.
King James II was an independent king. He was cooperative with Parliament as long as they did what he wanted.
Allies and enemies. So the kings of the United Kingdom had a lot of enemies. Let's get started with King James I. King James I liked the Protestants, like all of the kings do, and he also ended the war that he had with Spain, so I guess they're friends now. Let's talk about his enemies. He told Parliament to get lost so he can rule himself, and also didn't listen to anything the public had to say. Nice guy. He also openly hated Puritans and Catholics.
Let's go to King Charles I. He was friends with France, and that's about it. They weren't even good friends. Like his father, he openly hated Parliament and Puritans. He also added Presbyterians to that list. Scotland is on the enemies list because he started a huge war with them, and Ireland decided to tag along. Let's go to King Charles II. He made peace with France and made deals and compromises with them, making them a friend. They were also enemies because they secretly hated each other. Charles also had great relations with Portugal and Sweden.
King James II was Catholic, and he liked the Catholics. The rest of his kingdom did not share that view, however. When he created religious equality, the United Kingdom harassed him. He also tried to make a good relationship with Parliament, but it didn't last long. His enemy was France because after he fled to their country, they killed him. Mary II was not discussed in too much detail in this section of the text, but it can be said that she openly liked Protestants and hated Catholics. Foreign policies.
King James I encouraged peace among Europeans. In 1604, he ended a long-running war with Spain. He also had unexplainable sympathy for the Spanish ambassador. The ambassador even convinced James to behead Sir Walter Raleigh when he had come into conflict with Spain while looking for gold in the New World. James also sought to ally with Spain in mediating the 30 Years' War in Germany, showing complete disregard for the public opinion.
Charles I failed to successfully support the Protestant forces in the 30 Years' War. He launched a variety of unsuccessful and reckless military attacks.
In 1670, Charles II entered into a secret agreement with his cousin, Louis XIV of France, when he believed that he wasn't receiving an adequate income from Parliament. Louis gave Charles II 200,000 pounds annually so Charles would weaken the laws against Catholics. Louis wanted to see England slowly become Catholic again.
Religious influences. Many people in England were not happy with the Church of England and its views on Protestantism. Puritans believed that more reform was needed to purify the Anglican and Roman Catholic churches.
The greatest religious contribution by King James I was the authorized King James Version of the Bible in 1611. This became the standard text for more than 250 years. King James himself, however, was actually Presbyterian. Charles I married a Roman Catholic, and his religious policies garnered mistrust of many reform groups. They believed that his views were too Catholic. Charles II was Protestant and believed in religious tolerance, although his parliament was specifically anti-Catholic. His brother James was Catholic, and James' daughter Mary was Protestant.
Domestic policies. King James I continually challenged an increasingly self-assertive parliament. He also enjoyed lecturing Parliament, and he offended them, which led to the Apology of the Commons in 1604. This was a document in which Parliament protested the king's handling of various political issues. King James I also passed taxes over Parliament's head and forced the law courts to proclaim them as law. King James I finally dissolved Parliament in 1611.
King Charles I levied taxes without consent of Parliament and attempted to force the Church of Scotland to adopt high Anglican practices. This led to the Bishops' Wars. From 1642 to 1645, the English and the Scottish armies fought in the English Civil War. In 1645, Charles surrendered to the Scottish and refused to create a constitutional monarchy. He was tried and executed for high treason by Oliver Cromwell's New Model Army in 1649.
King James II appointed Roman Catholics to various positions in violation of the Test Act. The Test Act of 1673 was passed by Parliament that excluded Catholics from public offices and required all government officials to profess allegiance to the Church of England. Catholics, Puritans, and many others were not allowed to vote, preach, teach, attend university, and assemble for meetings. The Test Act led to the creation of the first political parties in England, which were the Whigs and the Tories.
Additionally, King James II granted religious freedom to all, further angering the anti-Catholic sentiment. Mary and Prince William of Orange destroyed the idea of divine right monarchy by accepting the throne from Parliament. This explicitly recognizes the legitimacy of Parliament.
The English Bill of Rights in 1689 was added to Parliament. This created free speech, the right to bear arms, and no cruel and unusual punishment. Also, no Catholic king can rule. Economic issues.
The deficit originally created by Elizabeth I was greatly worsened by both King James I and King Charles I. The deficit was originally created as a result of wars in Ireland, monopolies, and major taxation.
King Charles I did not have enough money to pay for these wars, so he relied on volunteer forces for defense. He also collected a tax from the entire United Kingdom during time of war and times of peace. The public did not like this. King Charles I also granted monopolies even when it was strictly forbidden. Due to this risky financial choice, the United Kingdom faced bankruptcy in the mid-1640s.
Symbols of power. King Charles I was an avid art collector. He amassed around 1,760 paintings by the end of his reign, from people like Titian, Raphael, and Rembrandt.
King Charles II was a patron of the arts. He was a personal patron to an architect who helped him rebuild London after the Great Fire. Strange but true. James VI became the King of Scotland when he was only 1 year old.
When King James I became the king of the entire United Kingdom, he greeted in a very special way. He said that he was tired and then threatened to drop his pants so they can, quote, cheer at my arse.
Charles I brought the forgotten distraint of knighthood back, which required a group of men who earned over a specific wage to attend a king's coronation in order to be knighted. The men who hadn't attended the coronation in 1626 began to be fined. This was an excuse to tax a large amount of people with little reason.
Decapitation was the way to go in the Stuart family. Among those beheaded were Charles I, their cousins, the Duke of Monmouth, and James Fitzjames, Duke of Berwick.
It was during King James I's reign in 1612 that the most important witch trials took place. These were the Salisbury witches and the Pendle witches.
The Stuart family and the historians who study them all disagree on how their name is spelled. Mary, Queen of Scots, and her son, King James I, spelled it Stuart, while King Charles I spelled it Stewart. So either the father or the son is wrong. The name is commonly spelled without a W, but the origins of the word Stuart come from the Stuart with a W royalty.
Thank you for watching our presentation on the Stuart family.
Or is it the Stuart family?